What's up, YouTube? It's Cholula's Comics. Thank you for joining me for night 8 of my 13 Nights of Halloween special. Tonight I'm going to be going over the storyline for Thor Vikings. It's a 5-issue storyline, and it's basically centered around Thor and some undead Vikings. This was back in the day when Marvel was printing their Max comics, which were, more centered around adults, adult language, a lot of gore, a lot of craziness going on. So here's book number 1. And here's the cover for book number 2 in this Viking storyline. Actually, I really like this cover. There's a lot of detail in the dead Viking's face. Here is numbers 3 and 4. I like number 3. It's kind of it reminds me a lot of Wolverine number 1, where he's got his claws pointed and he's got his finger come come at me, bro. It's number 3. Here's number 4. Actually, I'm gonna leave it like this just because I like that cover better. And this is the conclusion of the storyline, number 5. So without further ado, you guys, let's get into the story. Being that it's a 5-issue story, I'm going to try to go through it quick and not labor on every single little detail. There's a lot of action in it too, so that'll speed it up along pretty quickly. But yeah, man, hope you guys enjoy it. Book 1 of Thor Vikings. This book opens up like a lot of the Marvel Max books do, with blood, sex, and violence. But this one's set in the year 1003 AD. A Viking crew has just laid waste to an entire village and its entire population, including the women and children. Turns out the Vikings were upset that the townspeople had turned their backs on them, and for that they paid the ultimate price. But one man remained alive from the townspeople, the elder wise man. And as he stood up to the Vikings with his last remaining bit of strength, he placed a blood oath curse that the Vikings would stay in agonizing pain for 1,000 years, never reaching the land they seek. And of course the Vikings thought he was batshit crazy, so they shot him down in cold blood and went on with their mission. The days turned to months and years. The crew exhausted food and water, but didn't even feel the need to have them anymore. They grew so ingrained in reaching land that they didn't even see things in front of them. And one day, 1,000 years later, they spotted land, ready to take it and all of its possessions forcibly. Their minds and their bodies were too far gone to ever be human again. A lone man and a slew of onlookers approaches the Vikings and asks what they are there for. The Viking slays the man, replying, "Everything." The Vikings' bloodlust once again has been rekindled. We soon find out that no ordinary weapons can hurt them. The Vikings had no idea that 1,000 years had passed, but soon they began to question their surroundings. And though cursed to a fate worse than death, they seem to be blessed with supernatural strength and powers. And just as the Vikings are ready to trade in their bloodlust for just regular lust, the god of thunder appears. Thor senses the evil and knows he'll be dealing with the undead. While a standoff ensues between the two factions, it seems that the Vikings, even though they know who they'll be fighting, are not concerned in the least bit. Book 2, Thor Vikings. And I don't know about you guys, but that Viking looks way bigger to me than Thor. The Viking dares Thor to guess who he's about to go up against, but Thor doesn't care. He just wants to get the job done. But it doesn't seem like he can. And while Thor struck a mighty blow with Mjolnir, and bones were heard shattering and crackling, they were not the bones of the Viking, but instead the bones of Thor. The Vikings agreed to take everything, and take everything they did. And the Viking, Jackalson, continued to beat the ever-living crap out of Thor. I mean, I've never seen Thor get his butt whooped this bad, ever. And it's weird because he does it so effortlessly, and Thor is just like, Thor is not even fair, it's not even funny, it's sad. But and as Jackalson prepares to throw Thor's body into the East River, the SWAT team, helicopters, and even the National Guard show up. But they say the battle lasted only minutes, and soon we find out that the Vikings' flying ship is not just a ship, but also spews fire. And with Thor defeated down and out, only one man has the power to turn the tide, Doctor Strange. In Book 3 of Thor the Vikings, Doctor Strange and Thor discuss their plans on how they're going to get rid of these Vikings. But they agree, in order to figure out how to get rid of them, they have to figure out where they came from. Doctor Strange takes Thor into this room that he calls the River of Time. There he learns the backstory of the evil Vikings and how they were sent to this time period. They learn that it was the power of the cursing stone mixed with the power of the blood of the soul of the man who cursed them that gives the Vikings their power. The only way to defeat the Vikings is to find warriors from the same lineage of the man who cursed them. So that's exactly what they do. From the time stream they pull a series of 3 warriors. First is Sigrid the Maiden Viking. Next is the Teutonic Knight, the Magnus of the Danes, who took great pleasure in killing heathens and non-Christian believers. And finally Eric, a German Luftwaffe pilot from World War II. Doctor Strange brings the team to the astral plane, where he begins to explain the plan. Book 4 of Thor Vikings. As we continue to see the zombie Vikings raining their unholy terror on the rest of New York City, the team begins to assemble their forces in the astral plane. While the Knight and the Maiden Vikings seem to be on board with fighting the undead Vikings from the beginning, it seems like the World War II pilot takes some convincing. However, Doctor Strange is able to finally band the group together by showing them the complete and total atrocities that the zombies are committing. With a little help from some protection spells and incantations from Doctor Strange, the group is now ready to assemble and take on the zombie Viking horde that's completely taken over New York City. And after the initial shock and awe of the wonders of the future wears off on the warriors of the past, they're ready to get down to business. The group tests their luck on a few grunt-level Vikings, and it seems like Doctor Strange's spells worked. They're able to bust some skulls and split some wigs. And Thor says it best himself, "'Tis on." Book 5, the conclusion of Thor Vikings. The battle for Manhattan rages on between our new warriors and the undead Viking horde. Each warrior, whether strength or cunning, has their role to play. But while the group is distracted by what they think is the ship retreating, Jackalson gets the jump on Thor and stabs him through the back. The knight quickly jumps to Thor's aid, but it was almost not needed as Thor lands a vicious uppercut with Mjolnir. As Jackalson and Thor continue to battle it out, Thor, slowly but surely, starts to whittle the undead monster's body away, piece by piece, limb by limb. But Jackalson's power seems to be proving too strong for Thor, and Jackalson tries to belittle Thor by saying, "Look, your team has to come and rescue you." They tell Jackalson, "He's the freaking god of thunder. We don't need to rescue him." And before you know it, boom! Just like that, Jackalson lands himself in deep space orbit. With the Viking army now destroyed, the team says their goodbyes to each other at the Sanctum Sanctorum. And when it mentions that they're saddened that they will never see each other again, Thor assures them that their heroic bravery on the battlefield will assuredly land them in the halls of Valhalla. As we're left with this final little peace of mind, even if Jackalson is not completely dead, at least we know he's floating in space, watching what was once his empire firmly out of his grasp. Well, thank you guys again for joining me for another edition of 13 Nights of Halloween on this Thor's Day. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again tomorrow when hopefully you'll join me again for now a Frankenstein Friday. You guys know who it is. It's Cholula's Comics. Until I see you next time, keep stacking hella comics.